What if you could slide into 1,000 different worlds where it's the same year and you're the same person, but everything else is different? And what if you can't find your way home? Well, Robert Jeffries and I found the gateway. Now the problem is finding a way back home. This is Stumbling Through the Multiverse, a Sliders recap with Rain Coleman and Robert Jeffries II. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of Do You Know Who Your Friends Are? This is Stumbling Through the Multiverse podcast, and I am your co-host, Rain Coleman, the Carefree Black Nerd. Happy and excited to be here, and I am here with none other than the incomparable, incredible, fantastically brilliant co-host, Robert. What's up, man?
What's going on, friends? How many of us have them? Friends.
Yes.
And I was gonna say everything you said about me, I can toss back your way. Amazing. I was going to say credible. Incredible.
Incredible. Dependable.
Great guy. Awesome podcaster. Fantastic. Yeah. Here to talk about sliders. In a particularly interesting episode. So yes. I'll say that without giving too many thoughts about it. But doing good.
Good. Well, listeners, how are y'all doing? I'll give you about 3 seconds to answer. Perfect. Great. Good to hear it. So this is season 2, episode 8. When you're listening to and watching this episode, use that hashtag STTM pod, stumbling through the multiverse. So in this episode, Quinn senses something is amiss when these sliders make it back to their own Earth. My general thoughts for this episode, I will admit that initially I was like, I'm not feeling this. This is not it. But I will also admit that through the course of watching it, my mind changed. There were some things that I caught on to that I was like, yeah, I see what's going on here. But that never once made me feel like, oh, this is subpar, because I know, it's from the 90s. And, pattern recognition. So sure. But overall, this was a fun, interesting, and I'll even say educational watch. Like this episode to me truly stood out from it. Like regardless to if I rate it low or high after we're done, this episode felt like a standout one of his. Like it felt like out of all the episodes we've seen, again, whether it's rated high or low, this is like a benchmark episode that you have to watch. So, and again, first time viewing, I'll stop there.
Okay. I think, initial thoughts for me, it's sometimes it's hard to say initial thoughts because like I've seen these before. And it sometimes becomes a matter of like, do I remember them and do I not remember them? But this is one that stands out. So the initial thoughts that I have with having a history with this show is this was a good one. This is a good one, and we will get into the reasons why. But this is one of those episodes that makes me feel that Sliders lived up to its potential, where it showed that it lived up to the potential of the concept, of the themes, and it was just good TV. So those initial thoughts before we get into it.
Okay, I am. And listeners, y'all let us know, what are your initial thoughts? You got about 3 seconds. Oh, okay, that was good. Yeah.
That was a hot take.
Oh man! So, I'm take it away, Robert.
So
I thought
we start off And one of the reasons I really like this episode, I'm sorry, STTM pod, hashtag STTM pod. We start off on, I'm going to call the opening this world therapy world, because this becomes the framing device of how the story is told. And so we're actually present day. Rembrandt is in a counselor or therapist office, and he's basically just trying to wrap his head around the idea of sliding. Like it's kind of wearing on him. And this is one of the, and especially with the world that they were just on. So this is, I don't know if this is something we've directly asked for, but I think that it is something that we both would appreciate, because you wonder how being ripped away from your home, especially in his case, would, wear on him, wear on Rembrandt, and then all the other members of the groups, because they're, by the time I think they said it's been 18 months, right?
Yeah.
18 months. So he's talking to a therapist. I think somebody has suggested maybe he thought it would be a good idea. And the therapist is asking him about these other planets that he travels to. And, and Remy, he corrects him. He's like, these are other worlds. And he, just like he says a strain of sliding is getting to him, but the most recent world, like I said, is kind of what pushed him towards getting this. So we jump back a couple of weeks ago, and the sliders slide into a neighborhood, which it turns out is Quinn's neighborhood. So because the professor is always running in first, he's always kicked in the butt by Rembrandt, and this has been like an ongoing joke. And Rembrandt straight up says, "Well, I'd rather be behind you than in front of you, where you land on me." And so they land in front. They notice that they're in front of Quinn's house, and hope starts to rise. Quinn goes and does the gait test, and the professor says, "Be cautious," and then Wade is like, "You're a pessimist," and they're going back at it for a little bit. So Quinn does the gait test, and it creaks. And so they're getting excited. They're like, okay, we've been here before. Maybe this could be the same, thing happening on a different world. And then his mother walks out and says, "I know you'd slide home on a weekend." And for them, that's confirmation that they're home. They're on their earth, because his mom is like reacting like she hasn't seen him in a while, and the gate creaks, and it's just a big revelation. They're home on Earth Prime. So that is that's the opening up to the credits. So like, what are your thoughts?
Wade is annoying. She is starting to annoy me more than the professor, and I don't like that. Like, girl, shut the hell up. All in all, great opening. The mom is a new actress, right? That's not the same mom from season
To be honest, man, at this point, I don't know if she's the third iteration of
but she is the same from the other episode where the gate was fixed. I know that much.
Okay, so she's the second. So there's only been two.
Okay. So then this opening was really good. I truly do like like you said, the therapy framing, and I like it because it's coming from Rembrandt. And even though I know they're not going to get into like the racial elements of like if this was a true story, I do appreciate that it's him talking with someone, because I mean, they all deserve to, but I think him and Wade are the ones where it's like they're othered in this case, and him even more so than her. I like that. I'm going to say confused, but confused is not the word I'm looking for. But I'll just say confused. It confused me seeing him there in like a good way, because of the way that the story is laid out. So getting this and then getting, hey, we're back home, for me, just had those gears turning, like more than episodes prior. Like, yeah, I'm just here for the ride, but that had me like, okay, what the fuck are we about to get into? Because we've been here before. Y'all are disrespecting us at this point. So, but no, I think this was a solid opening. Issues with Wade aside, I like this.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of the therapist's office and kind of where that leads. So that we're definitely aligned on that. So we come back from the credits, and everybody is in Quinn's house. Her mom's, the what is his last name? Quinn, Mallory, the Mallory household. So I'll just say that. And they're drinking, they're toasting. They're just happy to be home. Quinn and Wade are talking about the professor, what he did. He's like, Quinn is like, man, this man created penicillin for this world. And Wade is like, tell him about the A-bomb. And so the thing that got me was when the mom said the A-bomb.
Yes.
And, yep. It said the A-bomb. So I was just like, okay, once again, we got these little clues that are being sprinkled in like on Prison Planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he was like, I'm paying with cigarettes. So she's like, oh, okay, well, hey, that's some wacky stuff that happened on the other planet, but everybody's just happy. Everybody's just collectively happy. Wade is actually, that's what it is. Wade is, she's on the phone with her family. She says when she got on the phone, her sister just yelled because she was so happy to hear from her. And, she's going to meet up with them. And it's just, everything is just happy. It's just good. So then we go downstairs to, Quinn's lab. And one thing that I'll mention is that everything seems to be like on the surface, at least immediately, the same. Everything is the same carbon copy, just anything. So there isn't anything outside of that A-bomb reference that we just, heard that looks kind of amiss. So the professor is downstairs and he finally, Remy, this is actually Remy's first time seeing the basement. Yeah. And he says that he thought that it might be bigger than he had imagined. The other thing that I do like about this episode, and we'll bring up other examples, is that they reference previous episodes.
Yes.
From the previous season, which is something that we hadn't gotten a lot of before. So they're getting better with that. The professor seems like he's in, kind of deep in thought, but what he says is that he is trying to figure out how to, he wants to, I think he says the next step should be how to control the timer and how to improve it. And Remy is talking about how, and I think then Quinn steps in and says that they shouldn't tell anybody about, their adventures just yet, and that they should kind of swear their immediate family. So in this case, it would be Quinn and his folk, Quinn and his mom, and Wade and her family, to like secrecy, but not to tell anybody. And Remy's just, and I kind of appreciate, but I'm like also, okay, brother, but he's like, I need the free publicity because I can, it's just going to help my career, right? And Wade's concern is just like, when I'm going to tell people that where I've been for, 18 months, And so Quinn says we got to figure out, we can't immediately tell people about it. So we got to, basically get all of our ducks in a row so that we can make a huge announcement. So the funny thing though is that when they're walking outside talking about this, making this agreement, Remy says, they say something like, maybe you were touring overseas or, but my, people aren't going to believe that I've been gone for so long. And then the professor says something to the effect was like, well, essentially like your career was in the shitter anyway. So, I was like, God, Professor.
Rough.
I mean, he stays consistent. And Remy, but Quinn gets them all to agree, like, let's just sit on it. So, and then Remy's like, well, when we have that announcement, it'll really do wonders for me. So, the professor goes his way, Remy goes his way. Wade is left with Wade and Quinn, and she says something like, you got us home. And it's a nice moment, and then she kisses him, yeah, exactly, and then gets into the taxi and goes to her parents' house, and and then after that, it's a nice moment with Quinn and his mom where, they say something, they're hugging and they're together, it's just a great moment. So, immediate thoughts. I mean, this is big moment, big few moments.
Bullshit. So. One thing I will say is I actually really appreciate Quinn. I think this whole episode I did, but this moment in particular, because say what you want, yeah, he's gotten a lot of people killed. Oh, sure, he's slept with a lot of women. He has an illegitimate child. Yeah, but like Quinn is really like genuine. Like I do feel like that opening scene of them after the intro when they were in the house celebrating, which the house itself looked different, but I was like, well, it's been 18 months. Like, she could put up wallpaper. That's not weird. But Quinn was so eager to celebrate the professor, and that's something that I like. I was like, okay, I have my issues with Quinn, I do, but I don't think I've ever felt like in the history of the show of what we watched so far that he's ever been trying to, one is not, has never felt like it's been for fame, and his evil version of himself from the pilot seemed like he was more like hedonistic. Let me get the pleasure. Let me find out the greatest world, the utopia world. But this Quinn has truly felt like, yeah, I do. I'm fucking up some shit, but I'm just trying to get us home, and y'all are doing the. So he to me felt like a good cheerleader in that moment. This feels like it wasn't even intentional. This feels like that just happens to be how he's portrayed, like through subtext. Like, I don't think it was written specifically for him, but that's how it came off to me. So kudos to him for that. Number one question: why the fuck didn't they check that timer? Yeah. Oh, we're back home. I still don't understand why did we not immediately look at. We've done it in every other world.
Yeah.
Before you even knew you were back home.
Yeah.
You had to like, nobody was like, okay, we're here. We got 3 days. Let's go to the what's the hotel? The
Dominion.
The Dominion Hotel.
Yeah.
Like, they ain't even been more thought about that. But
yeah,
because this blue card, like 18 months in there, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. Remy, my issue with the show, and this is this is based off the comment about his career. What I want to know is what was the state of black music in the 90s? I'll say late 80s and 90s, that we have this doo-wop. I don't even know. This ain't even doo-wop. What is Crying Man? What is this?
He's like R&B soul. Like R&B.
Is he? Because
the top, the spinning tops.
Yeah, I believe so.
They always struck me as like a variation of the Temptations or the Isley Brothers, or you know, like during that. It's like that. It's this weird midpoint of like the late 60s, early to mid 70s, right? Yeah, because they still wearing the ruffles on their shirts. So that's I just say R&B soul.
And I can get with that. I think the issue I'm having, it may be a non-issue because I'm not knocking the aesthetic or the music, but to me it almost feels like white folks in the writer's room, and this is the black music that's comfortable. It's like, if you watch, this is such out of left field, but if you watch Scandal, the Shonda Rhimes show Scandal, there was never any contemporary music on that show. You would get, when Olivia is drinking wine or there's something going on, it was like old school. It was black music, but it was never anything contemporary. You weren't hearing no R&B from 99 to 2000, and so this feels like white folks, and this is because their taste in black music at large always seems to be a bit behind what's contemporary, because my kids listen to that rap. So that's what Crying Man feels like to me. So that long roundabout way of getting to that point of him mentioning, hey, what about my career? And I'm thinking, like, yes, this is the 90s, but how many people are paying to see this act? Like, again, not knocking him, but I'm just
so to answer your question, and this is something we spoke to before. Obviously, no brothers and no sisters in the room when it comes to him. And we get away from this, and we're kind of getting away from this in this season versus the first season. His focus on his career was always played for jokes. If it wasn't always, it mainly was, and he was kind of like the comic relief at times. So when we saw, I asked you the first episode, did you see the music video where they have like the Cry Like a Man, video, and it's just played for laughs. So I always felt that their music interest for it, just as you said, was like a decade behind. And it was like, oh yeah, we saw I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, or we watched, like Shaft and stuff, and the music from back in the day. rather than making him, I don't know, like I'd relate to him more if he was like a Luther Vandross variant or
That's what I'm
something
thinking.
like that.
That's like, because with his age and the 90s,
Exactly.
that
Like
doesn't.
like an Albie Shore, you know.
Hey,
Yeah, yeah, like I could have seen that rather than this whole cry like a man. And then we'll get to the, you know, the appearance of I was happy to see
hey,
Bobby's fish.
you know, I was. That's what saved the episode for me. I ain't gonna hold you. I was like, fuck everything else. This is 10. But yeah, and again, this is not a
Yeah.
knock against Remy as a character.
Mm-hmm.
It is, but it's not him. It's the creation of him. Because I don't. There was just, I was in my head. I'm like, how do you reconcile this dated act that feels like it's on a cruise ship, or it's a very
Yes.
niche night in Vegas? And that's like, this feels so white. And again, I'm not even against it. I was never pulled out of the episode by it. But when he made the comment about his career, I got instantly annoyed, because I'm like, you were on your way to sing at a baseball game, which is fine. That's legitimate work. If we've been going 18 months, the world has changed even just a little bit. Like that was so, I was like, what the I mean, eventually I came around. I was like, fuck your career right now. Like, in this moment, that doesn't matter. One, do you even still have a home to go home to? Like,
right.
Let's worry about that. So I was like, why the fuck are we at Queens? Like, I would have called my mama right away. I'm not about to fuck all this. Like, 18 months, but that's neither here nor there. Then my last comment is Wade and Queen. This is gross. I do not fucking care about. At this point, they're siblings to me. They are siblings. I don't care. Siblings or cousins. Like, y'all. First of all, you look alike. Same hair. You both conventionally attractive white people in the 90s. You dress the same. You are the same person. So I'm convinced. I don't have more than that. I'm just like,
I mean, I'm that part I'm over it, you know, because I think that because they never kind of fully fleshed it out and just kind of, you know, and it wasn't even this, like, there was an element of like, will they, won't they?
Yeah.
Like, even that wasn't done like, well, you know, I think about it's weird. Like, I think about like Dawson's Creek or something. Like, and that shit was like so back and forth, but you were still kind of invested if you were watching it, right? So, you know, shout out to 30-year-olds playing 18-year-olds, right?
I mean,
it's crazy. But yeah. I just, when that happened, I was like, okay, when's the next scene? Oh, he's hugging his mom. That's sweet. Yeah. That's awesome. So
cool.
And the thing with Rembrandt, I'll make this quick, is like that never became not an issue for me. I think that was like why this isn't a perfect 10 for me, because like you said, that being his sole focus is like, that's not it. You know, I don't think that should be it. And I don't know how, like, I think you summed up, you know, basically like how I felt about him being written with that being his only focus. So anyways, so the next scene is like him going back to therapy. So we see him with therapist. He's still talking to he's narrating as the professor is going to the university. So that's the thing. You hear his voice, and you're basically talking about everybody kind of going their own ways. So for the professor, he goes back to the college, runs into a colleague. I'm assuming she's a professor, and here's your next clue. He's like, well, you know, I hope that I have my job, and she's like, why wouldn't you, or you know, something to that effect. And he's like, oh yes, you know. So he tries to play it off like, you know, things are good, but you got to realize that if he had been gone for like 18 months, she would have been, you know, she would have reacted differently. So. So that's a professor at university. Then we go to the studio, and Remy goes to Artie. I don't know if this is the same actor from the first season, his agent, but Artie is, you know, Artie acts like he's upset that his, you know, he just kind of dipped out, he just left out, and and I think Rembrandt mentions that he was overseas, you know, doing gigs. He tries to go with that story. There's a joke about, you know, the percentage of the take that he, you know, Artie should have gotten for him performing overseas and whatever. But then Remy, basically, he can't hold a secret like with like a bucket with a hole in it. Like, so he's like, I got this. It's going to change the game for my career, and not science, not changing the world as a whole. Right. It's going to change. It's going to skyrocket his career. So he goes and tells Artie. So then we see Quinn at home talking on the phone with Wade, who I think she's at her apartment.
Which is like, what were you getting paid, girl, at Radio Shack?
This was the apartment. That's why I was confused. I was just like, is this the apartment from Friends? It was just
honestly, like, God damn.
It just maybe she came back and they had like 18 months worth of back pay or something. I don't know. And they moved her into a bigger place, but she's in this her apartment, and I don't know who. I think she sees it. She turns the TV on, and then we see the professor being interviewed, and he's taking credit for sliding. So what I will say is, I think their time has passed. This cannot be the same day because they cannot. So the suggestion is that some time has passed between all these scenes where everybody's getting acclimated. Wade is living in Wayne Manor, or like the penthouse. In Gotham City or whatever, and Quinn is still living at home with his mom, right? So she sees them and she's like, "Man, this motherfucker!" And then so he says, "Turn the channel, whatever." And so he turns, and they're both watching it. And the professor is really being a piece of ish right now. And he shows a piece of rock, which he says that if it's tested, it will show that it's from a different world. Where the Europeans never, he says, settled, whatever they stole, where they didn't steal this country, shows the British mentality. So anyway, and Quinn is just not saying anything, and Wade is like, "Yo, we gonna run up on him," and then, whatever. And then they go to commercial. I'll hop into the next scene. It's just where Quinn, they're at the Dominion Hotel meeting up. It's Quinn, Remy, and Wade. What's up? Oh,
they're getting used out of that hotel, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. They're like, we're gonna use this set. So Quinn, Remy, and Wade are sitting down. Quinn's like, he doesn't care, right? And and that goes to what you were saying. Like he actually is just he's not focused on that, right? And then Remy talks about I'm trying to remember. He got a deal or something with his music. I can't remember specifically what it is. And then, Quinn is like, that's what it is. It's something because he told, that's when he admits telling Artie, and he got he got a deal out of it, like something music related. I think they said like that's what it was. His single has gone, not double platinum, but it's selling whatever because of the news that he is a slider. Whatever. That's how entertainment works. And then, Remy's like, I ain't the only one. And then he looks over at Wade, and I love it. He just threw her ass under the bus. And Wade is serializing her diary or her memoirs or whatever you want to call it, journal that was mentioned in like 2 episodes in Newsweek, right? So I think they said they're paying her like $1 million for that. And so Quinn is like, I can't believe y'all, let me go. And I think he tries to call, that's what it was. He gets up to call the professor to talk to him. And so when he goes back to the payphone, and we already talked, kids, about what a payphone is on Russian World, he goes and calls the professor's office, and his assistant or receptionist says that, he can't take calls. But while Quinn is talking to her, like I said, they're at the bar. So there's a framed newspaper with a headline that the 49ers have beaten the Jet in Super Bowl. I think he said 19.
19, yep.
In 19. So this dude comes back with the whole framed picture.
Vandalism,
right? I'm surprised somebody behind the bar was like, "Yo, put that back. What is wrong with you?" But he brings the whole thing to show Wade and Remy, and Wade's like, "I don't watch football." And what Quinn says was, on their world, the Niners played the Dolphins on Earth Prime, and he's like, "This isn't our world." And so the two of them look at him like, okay, well, this is crazy. So that's when we come back to the therapist's office. So
Mm.
everything from the university to now, the first suggestion that this may not be their world. What are your thoughts?
The professor is an idiot. I'm so tired of all of them. And I know it's a show and we have to like have some drama and miscommunication, but like, bro, if this woman, I mean, I don't, something about that interaction, like I pretty much figured out what was going on, but prior
Hmm.
to that, I was like, why are you not probing her for questions? Like,
Yeah,
yes, she shot to see you. You've been gone for 18 months, but like, have we learned nothing from sliding for 18 months? Like, what do we like? There
yeah.
was no, and then even them, um, like, how did you not know that Wade had this deal? Like, are we not watching TV? Every other world, we turn on that TV immediately. Are
so
we not?
so two things. They didn't check the timer, and they didn't watch TV, and they're breaking their own rules.
And it's so fucking frustrating. But even with the professor, I'm like, you're a dummy. Like, you are so dumb. I He pissed me off. Um, Rembrandt, I at this point I know what he's about, so I wasn't as frustrated. But the
Mhm.
whole time he was talking to Artie, I'm like, do you not have any family? Do you not have one ex? Like, do you not even think, oh, I went to that world where I married the girl of my dreams from high school? Let me look her up in this world. Like, did you not think like the priorities to me are so oddly thrown
Mhm.
off, honestly, by everybody, because except for Quinn. I was like,
Yeah,
well, he's happy to be with his mom. I was like, bro, the career, yes, I'm all for that, but like, you've experienced so much
yeah.
that to me a career is great
Hmm.
because you need to survive. But I don't think I would be as concerned about making music unless it was like, oh, I made this dope ass song on the world with my met myself. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, and this is so weird. This is so gay. But I'm like, oh, what if Beyonce did? I don't think Beyonce would come back to this world and be like, well, time for another tour. And I'm like, where's my husband and my kids?
Right. Like, where's
I
the
was like, this
family?
is weird. Even if we take an artist who's maybe not as successful, I don't know, or had some whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point of the fact is, I Rembrandt was odd to me. Him and Artie, and Wade. I was annoyed, but I'm also like, what? I mean, it's a show. They're working with what they got. But her in these memoirs, you wrote half a page on two worlds. Like, and I guess because this was coming out in the '90s and you didn't have streaming and you couldn't just rewind and whatever.
Mhm.
Like, I guess I get like, if one person remembers her saying journal, then this is enough.
Yeah.
Um, the professor on TV. I don't know if we want to mention it now or not,
No,
but
you can. You can.
I knew that wasn't him. I know who the fuck because he's been a dick on every fucking
Right.
world that we've seen him. I said,
Mhm.
there's no way.
He would be this
There's
much.
no, there's no way because if for nothing else, the professor has been consistent, especially when it comes to science.
Yeah.
And if he had a concern like, oh, it's a 95% chance that you might end up on the wrong world instead of a 90, or that you won't return, like I said, this is wrong. This is
Yeah.
wrong. And so the whole episode, from there on out, I was had my little detective cap on, but Quinn is so fucking aloof. Though I loved this episode so far, I do think that everybody was acting just slightly thrown off, and I can
Mhm.
excuse the fact that you're back on your world, but
Yeah.
I just can't erase 18 months of sliding and you not being more diligent about investigating what this is. They don't even have a code word between them that only they would know. So if
Yeah.
you run into I was like, do y'all not what maybe I just have an overactive imagination, but a lot of the shit they were doing, I was like, this just does not feel smart. So yeah,
Yeah.
fuck them.
I think. I think. No, you're like you said, you're not wrong. I think that, like we said, they broke two big rules.
Yeah.
Things that they've established. So I don't know. Like, I know that there may be some people who watch this episode and say like everything is the same. No, and I was just like, well, if there are so many variations of the world of planet of worlds out there, then we got to accept that there's something that is like very close, and this is the one that they got to. So that part has never been an issue.
Right.
But like you said, that it's just weird. Like there have been episodes where people are just kind of acting out the character, but I think the explanation for this is like they're getting everything that they want, right?
Yeah.
So they're being purposefully oblivious to it. So I think we go back to the therapist's office, and Remy is saying like, Wade and Quinn didn't. Remy says that he and Wade weren't really believing him, and Quinn was adamant that this was possibly not their world. And so we see Quinn gets home. I'm assuming it's at night, and when he goes inside, he hears somebody moving around in a room in the house, and he thinks it's his mom, and it's just somebody. It's a thief. So the thief runs out, pushes him, jumps over the fence. He said, "Fuck that creep," and then gets into a van that's there, and then just drives away. And so what it turns out is that the timer has been stolen. So we go over to Wade's office, and because she has an office now, so I don't know, maybe a bit of time. More time has been passing. So Wade is on a meeting about. She's on a meeting, and is this when he comes to see the assistant? The assistant, like, yeah. So Quinn shows up to tell her about the getting the timer stolen, and Wade is on a meeting with somebody about her memoir, her book, which I'm assuming is going from serialized, article to like book or whatever. So we all we know is that she's turned her apartment into her office. And actually that's a good idea for the set. So, but still, it looks like she was living where the friends live. So, Quinn has found more evidence that this isn't their world. And it's in a yearbook when he was in elementary school or middle school. There was a kid who now has no braces, but he had braces on his world. And Wade is looking at him like, okay, you were digging, for whatever. And Quinn says that their doubles possibly slid from this world. And, that's why people think that they were reacting the way that they were when they got back, except Rembrandt's family, because apparently he don't have one. So Quinn says the slide for their window might have closed, and he needs to get the timer. And I think she even mentioned before, like earlier in the conversation, was like, why don't you call the police? And, you need, and I think she's still like, you got to get ahead of the professor for, lying about stealing the sliding technology and all of that. And he's like, just don't get it and whatever. So I think also that's when she asked him, are you going to be at the museum opening? And he's like, he doesn't know. So anyway, so we cut to the press conference where the professor is explaining more about sliding to like this room of, reporters, and it looks like experts, scientists or other professors, and he's discussing sliding. And then Quinn walks in and is held up by security. But then it's funny when the professor sees him, he's just like, he catches his eye. And then he wraps up the press conference pretty quickly. So he goes over to Quinn and says, how did you get in here? He was like, I just acted like I was part of the student newspaper. And, the professor's like, why are you here? And Quinn is like, I'm not even sweating this bullshit. I just need to let you know, like, this is not our world. And I think he even shows him like, it's like, the examples are getting even more ridiculous. and I understand, because they want to give him a sense of like desperation, like he's reeking of desperation. And I think it's like there's a stat or there's an asterisk on a baseball card that he has in his world, and I can't remember the player, and the professor looks at him like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm good stealing from you because you've lost your mind, right? And so the professor doesn't believe him. So this isn't the scene. Yeah, there's another scene after this. So that they part ways, not amicable. And then we go to the studio where Remy is listening to music and it's just like Cry Like a Man. And the reason I can never take him serious, I'm sorry, like as a musician, and I know this brother he's a singer. He is actually in real life, he's a singer. He's one of the original cast of Dreamgirls, but they got him in the studio, not in his head, like soulfully, like Cry Like a Man. Yeah, like it's we're supposed to be taking this seriously, like he's listening to Papa Was a Rolling Stone the first time they played it, right? From the Temptations TV movie or some shit like that. So so he's sitting there and Wade shows up and they talk and they hug each other. That I actually do like. I love the bonds that they have, because they're always hugging, they're always like respectful and all of that. Well, when they're not arguing with each other, but Wade shows up and they're talking and she's concerned about Quinn and asking Remy, can you talk to Quinn? And he says, yeah, I will. They ask if he's coming to, she asks if he says after the the museum opening that he'll go ahead and talk to him. And then we go back to the therapist's office and Remy is talking about Quinn not enjoying the new world. He mentions again that why couldn't he just have roll with it, roll with the new world. So anything, I think this might be a good starting point because things get crazy after this.
Quinn is so smart that he's dumb. You mean you couldn't find? I mean, and I'm not even mad at him really, because it's them. But you couldn't find anything other than a elementary school yearbook where you called some poor young boy railroad track mouth. What are we doing? And I think it's also an issue with the show because you haven't given us anything with these other characters that we could point to. I didn't know Wade had a sister. Was I supposed to know that? I don't remember that.
No, because I think she always just mentions her family.
Yeah.
And that's I don't remember anything specific. Maybe more slider, more people who are more learned on the Sliders lore may know, but I don't remember that. I just remember her mentioning the family.
And I'm not mad at it because if I'm thinking of making a TV show and this is what I come up with, if she's not Quinn, then I would want to be General so I can cast a sister later. I get that. But I was like, why do y'all not know enough about each other that you can say, well, your mom had blonde hair last time and now it's red? And it was like, oh no, she may be dying. It's like, no, ask your mom for a baby picture. Like there was again, I know it's a TV show. I know we only have 40 minutes and I know it's in the 90s, but like all these things, I'm thinking like, you are so smart that you've created sliding, but you can't think scientifically enough about something else. Like if you're the only one into sports, then figure out what the hell Quinn is into.
Yeah.
You both are into tech. You can't be like, okay, look, we both worked at Radio Shack with this motherfucker. Clearly, CD Walkman ain't a thing in this world. Like, I feel like it was just no, I don't know, but I'm sure that would have spoiled the surprise. Wade and Rembrandt, I really did enjoy, like you, I enjoyed seeing them together. I really like their pairing, but I just thought they were both dumb as hell. Well, I don't say dumb. I'll say blinded by the familiar feeling of being home. Yeah. I'll say that. More so for Wade. With this motherfucker, I'm sorry, I can't get over.
Yeah.
Because we didn't even return to his apartment. Like, there's nothing about him that is rooted in this world. His car is gone.
Yep.
The apartment is gone. He did not wear the suit. He don't have a suit. The afro. Not that I want those things, but like nothing. And the other part is they don't travel with anything. We have been sliding up. We've not once seen Wade lose that journal, like pop out of her hand, and like, which is going to come in later with the professor. Because I'm like, what are you talking about? You wear coats. That's it. Why didn't they watch TV as soon as they got there? What did the okay? Well, that's I want to spoil that. I'm that's it. These fuckers. That's it.
I mean, actually, I hadn't even thought about the fact that everybody else has a home except Remy. Like we even go to the professor's house for like a hot minute, and Remy is always in the studio. Like it's the few scenes that we see him. I don't know. Like I said, his life just revolves around music.
He's not a real person.
Yeah, like the cartoon character. But we so after the studio, we like I said, therapist's office, and then we go to the museum opening, where the event is for I guess it's an exhibit, or whatever, focused on the professor, and he's invited actually all three of them. So the Black Tie Affair, Rembrandt, and Wade show up. They're still wondering if Quinn's going to show up. The professor sees the two of them and brings them together so they can take some pictures. And I just love the fact that Wade is like, fuck you, motherfucker. Like, she's like, I don't want to take these pictures. And then he's like, oh, okay, before something pop off, let's walk away. So, so they get a chance to talk to him. The weird thing about it is, I know that Rembrandt is always kind of even keel when it comes to certain situations, but I really needed him to be going in as much as Wade was with the professor, and because of Wade calls out the fact that you stole this, you stole, you pulled the rug out from under Quinn with announcing that this was all you. And the professor, she says, when you know that Quinn actually created it, and he says, Miss Wade, is that what he told you? And he says, I created the sliding theory. And he said, Quinn was just I can't remember exactly what he says, but he just downplays his role or his significance with doing what he did. So, whatever, he's like, well, hey, haters gonna hate, and he just walks away. And he unveils, first of all, a statue that's dedicated to him. And it's the statue is thinner. I'm just gonna say it.
That's a skinny man.
Like, you should have kept the half, dude. Like, if you're gonna be real, let's be real. And he calls himself the father of interdimensional travel, which is some bullshit. And it's like on a plaque on the statue. So Remy and Wade are disgusted, and they go to another part of the exhibit, and they find the timer set up like in a glass case, as on display. So that's when, and so the funny thing though is that before they walk over there, they're both disgusted, and Remy's just like, the Rolling Stone is here. I can't have them see this. And I'm just like,
what?
Okay, yeah, like you just realize, like, you see even how more of an ass this professor is, and your concern is about an article about Rolling Stone. So anyways, so they find the timer. Wade calls Quinn, and it's funny because you don't hear Quinn, but Wade is like, no, you can't come down here and steal it. You can't come down and steal it. And she's trying to calm him down, but then he still says something about this not being his world. And then she essentially says, you know what? Hey, I just called to tell you what happened. Bye. And then just hangs up the phone because she's like, I'm not trying to hear that this is our world. So what happens is, when she walks away, she hangs up the phone, and she looks at, I can't tell if this is a portrait or if it's looking outside of.
It's a picture.
It's just a picture. So like the picture is moving, right? Isn't the picture moving? Okay, like it's just a bad. Okay, I'm tripping because like I thought this shit was like, I thought it was him looking out. Okay, kids, I don't take drugs, but I thought this thing was moving. Like I didn't think that it was a port. It looks like a weird, like they took a real image and just put it in a frame rather than having somebody paint the bridge. To me, I thought she was looking out a window or like a futuristic painting. But
I'm gonna say you're right, even though I think I'm right. I'm gonna say you're right only because, to your point, like the way it's positioned, even if it's a window, whether it's a window or a painting, I think you're at the same result. But I think I'm right, but I think you're right.
Yeah,
because it is weird how they have it with graphics up there. So
right, and I don't want to say like it's Photoshop because I think that's the wrong word, but it looks like they took that realistic image and just put it in there rather than having somebody paint that. Because in my mind, I'm like, if you had somebody build a whole ass statue, you could have had somebody paint. And what I'm going to say, the Azure Gate Bridge. So the big reveal now, I always say, so like in the prison episode, it was that man getting shot to death. This is the equivalent of that man getting shot to death. When she looks at the bridge, and she's like, "This is not the Golden Gate Bridge. This is and it's a horrible name, Azure Gate Bridge. Like, just call it the Blue Gate Bridge or something. Like, I don't know. It doesn't roll off the tongue. But that's when she's just like, "This ain't my world." So we go back to the office, and Wade is talking with Quinn, and she is crying, and because what she says is that. And I like this little detail. She said, I must have listened to the radio, then mentioned on the radio, Azure Gate Bridge, like a bunch of times, and she just never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that thing of like, I don't know if it's necessarily like her, kind of pushing that out of mind, but it's, her not, like, we listen to the radio and some crazy shit comes on, like, it's just like stupid commercials, and that's what she did. But she is just like, she's torn up because she's like, this isn't her world. And she said that she like I said, she heard it on the radio, and she's having a moment. And I think it's warranted because like this is like this isn't her world. And never mind, I put something in quotes which I think is like it's spoiler or whatever, but I like this show. And I don't like Fox, and I'll say that. I'll just put it like that. I don't like Fox. So and Sliders fans know what I'm talking about. Just because I think this moment hits hard for a specific reason. So anyway, that's it, because that's a lot, and we're getting to the back end. Anything like you want to kind of focus on, or with the museum opening to Wade's revelation.
The professor has a fucking son.
So,
if we're home,
yeah,
where's the girlfriend that left or died? Where's the son? Like, I was like, give me a little more. Mm-hmm. The professor, even inviting them, felt right for the story, but it just felt, to your point, I think Rembrandt should have cussed him the fuck out, because we fished together. Mm-hmm. We were on Prison World. We were prison buddies together. We were in a fucking breeding camp together where we had to repopulate the world. We've done a lot of shit. I should be able to be like, motherfucker, what is wrong with you?
Call him on his bullshit, right?
Like, y'all have fought in a fucking
courthouse.
and other places you've traveled, you've traversed a rickety bridge to go see the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
you have fought. You were on the top of where were they in the top of when it was flooded world? What was that? in a kente cloth. What are we doing? How are you not? At this point, y'all are truly family. I didn't like that either. Though I will say Rembrandt looked good. Like his fit.
Yeah, his fit was good. Like
I was like, girl, I know you ain't got lottery world money, but like,
I can't remember her outfit, but I think she looked all right.
Man, she had this fucking crushed velvet, ugly shirt. It fit well on her. But I'm like, for a museum opening, girl, you better do something a little. I don't know. I guess it's very not feminist of me, but like, ugh, she looked crazy as hell wearing Quinn's clothes again. I thought that was Remy that stole the timer. I thought that was the other. Because I was like, who is this black man? But I think he just had on a mask. I was like, but I thought it was Remy. I was waiting for like the entire Fantastic Four to pop up and be like, yeah, now we got to whoop y'all ass. Like but whatever. I will say, though I am not a fan of Wade, this scene of her breaking down, I said, give her Academy Award, because it felt so real, and it felt, it was one of those things. What is it called in writing? Is it like a universal truth, like the emotions that everyone feels, like loneliness, love, anger, like this. I don't know if she was dealing with something in her real life or if she's just a good actress, but this moment hit me so hard, because I can point to so many things from the smallest to the largest that I've been frustrated about on my own. And this in particular, though she's never in the course of the show said, I want to be a writer. I want, like, that's never been an aspiration of hers, to finally give this girl something to do and it be the thing that she can survive on. I think it's like an audience surrogate thing where I'm like, oh, she's a woman in the 90s. She's back home writing her little 2 pages in a journal, got her millions of dollars. She can take care of herself and her family. Yeah. And to see that fucking ripped away from you, where you, that, again, I still have my critiques about Wade, but I think this scene, these little 2 minutes, chefs, and again, Quinn, this really speaks to that character because he didn't fall flat where it's just like, oh no, Wade, don't be sad. Like them embracing and him kissing her, and he's like, we're gonna be right. That felt real. I was like, why don't we get this shit? This is, I don't know who directed this. I don't know if it was, maybe it was a woman or what, but that scene.
Well, that actually goes back. It's funny you mentioned the thing with as far as who directed it.
Yeah,
I was going to mention that later, but I can mention it now. Adam Nimoy, son of Leonard Nimoy, Spock, the Spock fame. And it looks like he's directed a bunch of stuff. So, shouts out to him. But it was that's what, there's a reason, and we'll get to it later. There's a reason why that scene kind of hits, and I think this episode in general does, but especially for Wade. So I'm glad that she brought it, for that moment.
Shout out.
But yeah, so we so from there, like I said, that's the big reveal. And so Quinn and Wade now have to find Remy. Well, first they go to the professor. That's what happens. So they go to the college, and they get there, and apparently the professor knew all along. He says that they realize that he apparently knew all along that this wasn't their world, and he says that essentially, like, this is going to be as good as it gets. And the professor starts, what do you say? He starts reading them. He tells Wade, like, you got money, you ain't working at fake ass Radio Shack. Remy talking 500 worlds about his career. Now he's got his career back. Quinn, you're still living in your basement, but I'll give you my scraps. And it just like he's like, this is it. This is, there's, I'm sorry, there's a place called This Is It down here, and there's a commercial. It's a barbecue place. Yeah. So I was really about to lapse into like singing that song, but the professor is like, deuces, that's it. Y'all, let's be adults about this shit. And so Quinn was like, he says, let's go talk to Remy. But he doesn't know. And so the other thing though, is that, so as they leave him, they go out onto like the campus, and Wade I think this is the part where they start talking about trying to figure out if they even, the time, if it's counted down, right? Because nobody looked at the timer. That was the best. When you mentioned that, as soon as they saw his mom, it's like they tossed the timer to the side, and they were just like, yo. And I think Remy was like, maybe we should go get that, but no, they didn't do that. So, but and so this is where they start getting worried about the time. And Wade also mentions like, oh man, I don't know if we're gonna get home. And he's like, do you think we're gonna get home, Quinn? And Quinn says, I don't fucking know, man. Like you want to talk about acting? When he just said straight up, he said, I don't know if we can get home. I don't know how many times I can keep apologizing for this shit. It happened. Okay, you jumped through with me. You wanted to go on adventures. The only person I'm dealing with this shit is Remy, because that brother got swept through, and Black Lives Matter, and we should have done this shit to him, right? And so Quinn was like, we fucked that brother up. All y'all going for the ride. And then Wade was like, whoa, whoa. I was so happy. I was like so happy. Quinn was like, and then he was like, okay, I'm gonna get y'all home. He was just like, he had been sitting on that for a minute. So they go to find Remy. We go back to the therapist, and there Remy is talking about like he had gotten a gig with MTV Unplugged. And because, MTV Unplugged, they would have older artists, come on there and do like the acoustic version. I can only imagine what an acoustic version of Cry Like a Man is. I don't want to know. If we ever get a sliders convention, that might happen. Because I could see them doing that. So anyway, so he is. They find him. No, they don't find him. Remy is behind. Is backstage at this MTV Unplugged performance, and this is when the Four Tops, two of the Four Tops show up, and it's the actor that played Maurice Fish, and the actor that played the Reverend from End of Days. And I guess there was just like two brothers, right? So I'm glad they got Maurice Fish back, but but I know in the original Four Tops video, the priest did not, the pastor did not play one of the Four Tops. So whatever. I'm glad the brother got some work. And so they come in, and like I said, I hate that the comedy is focused on just them. And it's that thing of like they come in demanding, like, we're gonna perform, but you better let us cry. And Remy says, we can't all go out there crying. I'm the crying man. And like it feels like ants are crawling on my body as I'm watching this scene. It's just like, and so then somebody already says, "Hey, somebody named Quinn is calling. Wants to call you, wants to talk to you." And he says, "Tell him I'll call him back." And and then they're still arguing about the crying, and these grown ass men are just standing there arguing about who's going to cry on stage, and they show Clavant Derricks. I'm sorry, I'm taking him out of his character because he's like, what the fuck is going on? So with this scene. So anyway, so we cut to the museum. Quinn and Wade says we can't get Remy, so let's burglarize. Like what was the name of the dude from the world? Michelle and the Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character. Sid, was it Sid? Yeah, it was Sid. Yeah. Sid and Michelle, like they said, let's go thieving like they did, like they wanted to. So they go to steal the timer, and they realize that it's a replica. And well, the first thing they notice is that it's 30 seconds, right? Yeah. They say, "Oh shit, well, everybody's fucked," and so they're running away, and they realize like it's a replica. It's and then they are, we have this chase in the museum, and then they're caught by like 12 security guards who all just work there the same night. So, like, I know people who work security. They don't got 12 people deep at the place. So crazy. We because I think we're getting to we're getting close to the so we go back to the therapist. He's narrating. Remy starts to at this point, in the therapist's office, he's talking about like where he starts to reconsider the world that they were on, or something like that, something to that effect. And he also, that's what it is. He also says like, "Oh, I've taken too much of your time. I'm going to have to meet with my friends soon so we can, get out of here." And then the therapist is like, "Hey, just stay here for a few more minutes. Let me tell my assistant to cancel my last appointment." And so then this, I'm not going to say it. This dude walks out to the assistant and says, "Cancel my last appointment and call the mental hospital because this is the worst case of dementia that I've ever heard." And I'm like, you can't do that. I mean, maybe on Therapy World you can, but you can't just immediately lock somebody up unless they're a danger, I think, like to another person or yourself. And there's nothing in his story that he's told you where he's just like, "Oh, well, we slid from world to world, slicing throats. How about yours?" That type of shit. Like Rembrandt didn't say no shit like that. Rembrandt came to him for help, and this guy was just like, "Time to lock him up." So we go to Remy. He goes back in, and Remy, they go back to his flashback. And Remy had bailed them out. And what he explained was when his bandmates had come in, talking about the crying part and, trying to get credit or whatever, he noticed that on the songwriting credits for the music they were going to perform, that they had credit. And he said on his world, they never did. He was like, he was the one who wrote the songs or whatever and whatever. So he said that's kind of what tipped him off, in addition to, I guess, Quinn's baseball card, to the fact that this wasn't his world. So he bailed them out. I'm like, damn, you can get bailed out for like robbing a museum, but hey, this is that world. And so they decide to like, well, if it's not if that was a replica, then the actual timer might be at the professor's house. So they go to his house, they break in, forever breaking in somebody's house. I love it. Wade finds bifocals on the desk, and he's like, I didn't know the professor wore bifocals, and he doesn't wear them. So that's another clue that, as far as a big reveal. They hear the professor in the basement yelling at them, and when they go downstairs, they find their professor. Fuck it, I'm not going to do air quotes because that's their professor who's been locked up. And what he explained was that when he got there, he was captured by the double, and the double and his assistant, who we never see. That's the other thing that I like. The guy who hopped that fence in one jump, that was actually pretty good. We never see his assistant. So, but they basically threw him in the back of a van, or I think he said a van, and then brought him downstairs and chained him up. And his double had been trying to get information from him about the sliding process, and he said, "I gave him nothing." And he look at a blackboard. I'm sorry, a blackboard. And he's just written a smiley, like a sad face on it or whatever. So, so he's been down there essentially for 2 weeks. So I guess the suggestion is they've been there for 2 weeks, because that's what the professor says. So, they free him. Professor is being professor. They said, "Do you know where the real timer is?" And he said, "Yeah, he left it in one of those drawers." And so when they look in the drawers, it's not there. And then they hear the duplicate professor say, "Are you looking for this?" or some shit like that. And he's on the stairs. And so it turns into this thing where the sliders don't know who is who. But I'm like, why would their professor had come to this world and tied up the duplicate professor? So there should be no question until they start. And why are they wearing the same thing? Anyways, so this is not handled the best. So it turns into this thing of like, they don't know who we be. They don't know which professor it is, but because the professor is a professor, he just knocks that motherfucker out. So they I'm like, okay. So they run up the stairs, and I think even Rembrandt says, "You better be the real professor."
Yeah.
And so they get out of that house. So they go to Quinn's home, and Quinn is talking to his mom and says, "Yeah, I'm not your Quinn." I guess this is after he has explained it to her and has time, and she says, "I don't understand," but she says, "Can you just stay until my Quinn comes home?" And it's sad.
That is.
It's just sad. So Wade says they don't give Wade a moment to say anything to her parents except goodbye. Like, they just actors that they just tossed in randomly. Like, there's no emotional attachment there at all. So, they're there. And then who rolls up? The double professor. And they just fight. Like they get the timer. And I don't even know how much time was between when they got from the professor's house to here. But the professor shows up, and they just start this ridiculous ass fight. And Wade, Remy go through, and then Quinn. And the funny thing about it is, at the top of the stairs, Wade's mom and dad and his mom are just watching, and nobody is reacting to the fact that these people are going like World Star on these two like big British guys are just whooping each other's asses. Like, I need some type of emoting from the family. Like, and so Quinn turns around and says, like, "Professor, we gotta go." And so I think he jumps through, and then one of the professors jumps through, and then the professor that's left behind goes, "Oh my God," or "Oh goodness," or whatever, and looks concerned. And that's that. So so anyway, so he goes through, and then we go back to the therapist's office, and the Remy even says something that, and this is something I'll get to. They don't know if they got the right professor, so that's something. So even the sliders are questioning it right now. So they So as he's in there talking to the talking to the therapist, the professor, Wade, and Quinn show up outside the therapist's office and say, "We need to get our friend." And then the assistant is like, well, you can't go in there. He's with he's with a patient, and then they say fuck this, and I think the I'm just gonna say Professor Squared says we're family, and then they go in, and they says, yeah, we gotta slide, and then Remy's like, oh, okay, these are the folks I'm telling you about, and therapist is just like looking, and then the portal opens up. And then the three before them, they jump through, and then Remy turns around. He says something to the therapist. I can't remember what he says, but the therapist's face is just shook. Mm-hmm. And then he jumps through, and then they cut to later on, and the therapist is like talking about, he was like, the portal was it was a beautiful blue, and this and that. And he's like, oh, you see him looking up, and as they pull back, you see him in a straitjacket being into the mental, to the mental hospital or whatever. So that's how the episode ends. I'm not going to say they fuck up this guy's life, because he was about to fuck up Rembrandt's life. So, hey, it's too bad for him. So that's how the episode ends. What thoughts about all of that?
Bullshit. First of all, where's the Allosaurus that y'all done broke? Where's them paleontologists who I know whooped y'all ass? Because ain't no way I'm letting you fucking four bozos come and fuck up my. But yeah, my main issue is, why are you telling the villain your plan? What? Well, Professor, if you're not going with us, I'm gonna get that timer back by any means necessary. He has the time. Like, what are we doing? Why are you telling? And why didn't you go see Rembrandt first? What? Like, Arturo has proven that he is evil in every other world. He is a bad person.
Yeah.
You think this was like, he was like a, what was he, like a general to the murder army? Like,
he was a general.
He was a sheriff. He did so much terrible shit, and let me go talk to him and tell him, even if we're under the impression this is our professor, like, he's shown that he's tame where we're from. Right after that, why is it not enough that the Golden Gate Bridge is blue? Like, I'm sorry. After that's been established, it shouldn't have to be, oh, I looked at the contract. What? Who the fuck cares? The Golden Gate Bridge is blue. And it's blue, and nobody said, yeah, we painted it 18 months ago.
Yeah, right.
Like, with motherfuckers, it's been blue since I was a child, and they're older than you. Like, let's turn this thing on. That's what I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Once she found that, they should have all found it out together. Like, there's no, like, so that was dumb. Maurice, happy to have him. I wish they had have played the singing career much more seriously, because I feel like there's a way you could have established this, like in the world with his twin, I forget which world that was, where the other two, then, because it seemed like they were not working, and then when him coming back and the sliding, it gave them more publicity, and they wanted the full group back. There could have been a way for you to be like, okay, I don't get to stay, but their careers, they get to salvage their career. It was like, you can't cry because we gonna cry. And I was like, all right, y'all are 80 a piece. Like, y'all are grown ass men, but okay. But it was good to see my boy again. The other thing, Remy, punk ass Remy. What did I put? I'm so mad with this hair. Hold on. Remy could have found what? Yeah. Why didn't Remy look for any of the women that he found in other worlds? Just one. Like Angela, wasn't that the girl from Lottery World? And then the lady who he was lying to in the Collar World.
Angela was in the Collar World. I can't remember the sister's name from
our bad, because I don't either. But I was like, you don't have a family, so like you couldn't have even like, man, let me look these girls up. Because if I'm back on top, I've proven that me and these girls have chemistry. Why can't I get with one of them? Then complete my whole. His
music. Everything is music.
That bullshit. Also,
Julianne. Her name was Julianne.
Julianne. The therapist assistant. What world are we in with your hair? It looked like that. That egg. I was like, what the fuck? This is. I don't know what the fuck world this is, but she's hiding a book bag in there. That was some ugly ass big hair. I was like, what? What? Ain't no white woman finna wear this shit. I was so mad. This ain't got nothing to do with that. But I was like, oh, I'm so fucking mad. I had no good and damn, and especially because the therapist had regular hair. He just had regular man hair. That shit was terrible. That shit was ugly as fuck. But yeah, the mental hospital thing to me was very extreme. I'm like to your point, he wasn't a danger to himself, but also who's to say he's not just like testing his storytelling abilities on you? Because if a therapist believed me, now I can write that book I wanted to write. It was just like this is violently.
It was. I mean,
not racist. I was, but it was just. It was something.
And it makes me wonder. Like, is that how? Because we know how the mental health was dealt with in our world, right?
Yes.
Like so. I wonder if in their world that's kind of they never advance to the point where we're at right now. And not saying that we're perfect, but we weren't. I mean, it was bad. It was bad back in the day. So in my mind, like when I heard that, I was just like, okay, so that's the difference for this world, at least with this, because like you said, that was extreme. Like,
when you could have offered some pills, like he was just like, we're America, we love drugs and guns. Like you could have given him some drugs. I was like, this is.
It was a lot.
I know they didn't factor this in, but I'm thinking of this black body in the American healthcare system, and I know even if it was Wade on that couch or the professor or Quinn, it would have been the same storyline, I would imagine. So I know that that's the point, is that he's telling this story. We believe it. We think the therapist believes it, but the twist is no, this motherfucker's crazy. So I get that, but I was just like, this black body being turned in because you're not. And this is especially kind of hit home for me because let me see, how can I reframe this? Thinking about mental health, thinking about black bodies, thinking about how black people on like the autism spectrum or any variation of a neurotypical behavior gets that coupled with our bodies. Like what's the young black guy who was like a teenager, but it was, oh God, I want to say, I don't want to say it wrong. I want to say it wasn't Down syndrome. Fuck. I think he was autistic, but he was nonverbal, and the teacher presiding over him did not follow the rules that were set by the school and the mom, and so he had a negative reaction, and where I think he maybe hurt the teacher, like pushing her off. Something happened. Forgive me the details of, but what I'm saying is this black body who is not fitting into the mental square peg that you've set for people in general, not accounting for culturally people are different, is now being punished for simply telling his story in a space that is designed for said story to be told. This ain't Rembrandt walking around the streets of New York mumbling to himself. This is him at a therapist's office where ideally he's paying you. Like you're getting paid. So it was this whole thing about like, again, let me bring up another show, Tom Swift, where it's not the same, but it's very similar. Black women in pregnancies in the history of black bodies in general, but specifically black women bodies being experimented on, not giving anesthesia. Should even go to the fucking Lovecraft country. These things have been addressed. So even though I know this wasn't their intention, I just could not shake those thoughts, ideals, and in real world, in the sense that these are shows that have put this on our screens, real world examples where it's like, nigga, this is violent. This is violent, and it's so deceptive. Oh yeah, keep him here. You know, cancel my last appointment. Which, first of all, it's midnight. Why are you seeing people at midnight? You need to go up to a review board because you are freaky. But like, it's midnight. You canceling your next appointment because you want to keep this black man here talking long enough to check him into an asylum. Like, there's not even a scientific part of that where it's like, what he's saying is babbling. It's not real, but it feels very different from somebody who's just like, we've committed before. I don't know. I went down this long rabbit hole of like, what?
I mean, it makes sense because there's a case happening where the state I'm in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And if I talk about this, it's gonna make me upset, but it's also gonna be like, basically it falls into that space of black bodies.
Yeah.
And it there's fuck it, I'll just go ahead. There's a mom who she's brain dead.
Yeah.
And she's pregnant, and because of the laws that we have down here after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, they're keeping her alive for the sake of the baby, and she's brain dead. So you have this case of this woman essentially being used as a biological incubator or whatever, and she is, and so her family talked about, they I don't know if it's like this thing of them finally telling the news, and I say look into the case if people listen to this, because the time frame for all of this happening is it hits further home how messed up this whole thing is. So when you mention the whole thing about like bodies and how our concern about the medical industry and and how we're treated at times and this, so like you mentioning all that, and I had the story like in the back of my head because I literally just heard about this last week. So yeah, so that even though it's like played for humor, and like you said, I'm pretty sure when they wrote this episode, they weren't thinking of the stuff that we're talking about.
Right.
Because they just weren't, because they can't think of anything outside of music for this brother and comedy. There's a extra component to that makes that worse. Like I always talk about, there's this episode of D Space Nine. It's actually a couple of them. Actually, no, it's just one, where Benjamin Sisko, basically Avery Brooks, and without getting into it, getting too far into the story, he plays a character who is writing the story of D Space Nine, but it's set in 1950s America. Okay. So he's playing a black science fiction writer. So there's a scene where he is, these cops, they beat him, and for black people watching that episode, so for white Star Trek fans watching this episode, they're like, wow, this is bad, right? And then for us watching this episode, it's just like, this is fucking traumatic, right? Not just because Benjamin Sisko is getting beat up, it's because of like, so there's that added component of, and I think Avery Brooks directed the episode. I don't know who wrote it, but I know he had a large hand in it. Like, this is going to, unfortunately, put it like this is going to hit hard. For black Star Trek fans or black viewers. So in the case of something like Sliders, when that guy was talking about, like you said, let's just rush him off to the asylum, you think about how many times that possibly has happened, based on race and also sexuality, and then also sex, right? And then also just the disparity of people not understanding mental health, so. But so that's why I was happy when that guy's ass got tossed into. He got taken to the asylum. So So the slider. Before we get into I call them the superlatives or whatever, I'm going to talk about the history of this episode within the Sliders community. Okay. So the big thing with this episode, and the question is, which professor slid? This is one of those episodes that Sliders fans will talk about, they'll debate about. So if you do a search for which professor slid, people have talked about this ad nauseum. I think the question has been answered. Okay. I can't remember what the answer is. I'm just being honest with you. I can't. But there, so like I said, definitely anybody, you can brain yourself, research it, but also, but see, I don't want to tell you to research it.
I'm not.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, but anybody listening, if you want to, but yeah, this is a big one. Just like I mentioned in that the previous episode from last season, or maybe earlier this season, with the first time they did the creek, the gay creek. Like there are moments in Slider history where it's they're huge, they're big, and this is one of them. So my theory is, I think that his duplicate jumped.
Okay, same.
I think his duplicate slid, and I will leave it at that. I'll leave it at that because like I said, there's anything more that I have to say will kind of like might give a clue as to kind of where things go with the professor. But that's always been my theory after watching it a few times.
Well, that was my theory watching it
Yeah,
this time, and
yeah,
it pissed me off. I don't
yeah,
now. I'll say I'm going to remain pissed off in this moment, but it remains to be seen. This
yeah.
may be interesting going forward, where I probably won't care anymore. But
Hmm.
I was very upset
Hmm.
um, that because in my mind it only made sense that the wrong professor slid. Because one, I would think, yeah, you're angry because you've been locked up, but I think the wrong professor would be stronger. And then also, we had a pure professor for so long who was not like these variants that were evil,
Hmm.
but we've never been up close and personal with them where they also had Slider's knowledge. So I said, no, of course the evil one was that. What's the Marvel thing where who is it? It was Marvel and Image. Was it when like there was a fight on panel where was it Howard the Duck was both belonged to Marvel and Image at one time? God, who was it? I think it was. I'll have to find it. But there was this thing
Hmm.
about who retained the rights to. I want to say it was Howard the Duck, and in Image he was like cloned, and then there was a big fight, and then on panel, essentially when they went back to their own worlds, it was backdoored in that the Image Howard would. What I'll try to find it and link it in this
Hmm.
episode, but that's what it feels like. It was like, of
Yeah,
course. That would be the next step because why even introduce the evil professor who knows all this shit and not switch him out?
yeah,
Like, so yeah,
yeah. Story wise, I don't know what it adds. You know,
nothing.
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know what it adds because I don't know that the show. You ever have those moments where, like, the sliders are like he's doing weird shit, right?
Hmm.
Um, because to me, it feels like, and maybe like as we rewatch this, it feels like it is business as usual. you
Yes.
know and so that's the thing, like, and I think that's why it never, like, when I realized that it possibly was this world's professor, um so that I'm just going to say Professor Squared,
Mhm.
and then knowing how I was just like, I don't get it. And I think that if you did something like that, I keep saying now, and
Mhm.
I don't say that to say like the storytelling is better than it
Yeah.
was, is different. But I think that if you do that now, you would definitely have episodes where the sliders will be questioning it, or
Mhm.
you would have them doing little things where it's just like, oh, okay, this may not be,
Mhm.
our dude. So that's kind of where I come down on it, on the discussion. But yeah, this shit has been spoken about ad nauseum. As far as when it,
No.
I'm not saying like this is bad for us to talk about it, but
No, no, I get it.
this is one of those things that Sliders fans will kind of discuss. Um, so yeah, so
No, no.
going,
'Cause I just
yeah,
I'm
no, yeah, yeah,
so mad. This would piss me. I don't care about Professor or Clone. I don't care about that.
yeah.
When they're in that basement, what pisses me off about this, and it isn't like, oh, Sliders is bad, but it pisses me off because it's been done before and done better.
Hmm.
When you have two of the same professor and he has read Wade's book,
Hmm.
there's always this is a trope where when there's a clone, there's always this thing of like, oh, he knows this one thing that's different, or he responded this way. T and Tamara did it in the Goosebumps episode where one was they were like a chameleon, a human chameleon.
Hmm.
Johnny Bravo has done this, I think. There's been so many instances in the 90s specifically
Hmm.
where usually coming out of shooting the wrong person, but what you can say, oh, you had a son.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that was mentioned. I felt like that was done poorly.
I think part of what ties into that is one of the reasons why this is not a perfect 10 for me is that
Mm-hmm.
we always have this urgency at the end of the episode we got to make the jump. And so
Yeah.
because literally that part, what is goofy to me
Mm-hmm.
is that we have this, like, he knocks him out, goes up the stairs, then they are immediately across town near at Quinn's house, and then you see this taxi roll up, and I'm like, this is the 90s. Unless the taxi had time to, because you got to call a taxi.
Hey.
You don't. It ain't Uber, right? And even Uber takes some time. So the amount of time. So that's the thing. Like, because things are so rushed,
Yeah.
that's why you don't have a proper opportunity to do the typical, like, hey,
Yeah.
I know this about
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
They could have talked about how they argued on world whatever, or like
Mm-hmm.
little things. So it's the act, not even the entire act 3, but many of these final moments, like 5 to 10 moments, it always kind of pulled something out. It pulled the rug out from a lot of these episodes because they were like, there's always this immediate rush and it's not handled the best.
Yeah.
So I think that might kind of speak to what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, there were countless examples of that trope, during this time period, because that was the 90s, that was the 80s. I mean, you had TV that was like that, and you just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we roll with it.
Yeah.
Duplicates. Who's the evil one? They both wearing the same shirt, wearing the same jackets.
Oh, and also, that's okay. This is my last time. What
Yeah.
the fuck? This is what I mentioned earlier. They
Yeah.
only wear jackets when they jump.
Yeah.
We've never seen Wade's journal. When my professor was like, yeah, I see this onyx arrowhead from the Choctaw from Sinners. It was like, where on the professor's body was this? Because it was not a thing. Like, I get it for this episode, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have this rare mineral or whatever. But like, they're never carrying like a satchel, which would not be difficult to just have them wear and just randomly pull out, here's the journal, like, or here's, the other thing, Wade, I understand she was mad, but if it was me, once I realized, fuck, this ain't my earth, I'm going to withdraw my millions, put them in a book bag, so when I slide, I have money.
Yes.
I'm gonna stop there because there's so many other things I could nitpick on.
This episode gonna be a 5 by the time you've done with it.
God, no, for real. This is 2.1. No, like, what the hell?
It was, I mean, it definitely there definitely a lot of, like, I don't want to say plot holes, but it's just things that they miss that could be simplified by just like going just one thing. It's nothing major. So it's I don't know, like, let's do favorite. Okay, so favorite and least favorite character.
Shit. Favorite. I kind of want to go with Quinn. Fuck. I'll go with Quinn's mom. I'll go with Quinn's mom, Mrs. Mallory. I think that woman did a really good job, and she really pulled at my heart. Like, it was a kind of a throwaway line, but she was like you said, can you stay until my Quinn shows up? Like, that was so genuine. I was like, God damn. Like, even though she wasn't in a whole lot of this episode, knowing who she is and what she means to Quinn, I think every time we saw her, I think it was good. So I'm gonna go with Quinn's mom. I thought that line in particular really had me like, oh shit, lady. Damn. So she'll be my favorite. My least favorite, I don't want to say Remy, but I'm like, you and this music shit. But it's also a symptom of the writers being terrible to him. I'm going to say my least favorite, which is going to kind of contradict some other shit, but I'm going to say I'm going to say Wade because I feel like out of everyone, the professor, even if that really was him, okay, I get it. Sliding, you get to be famous. Remy, you get your music career back. Quinn, you have your mom back. But with Wade, though I did like her story, it's like they was like, yeah, Murphy Brown it up, girl.
Yeah.
You're a single white woman doing it for yourself. Get these millions. Wear this fancy shirt. It was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So with her giving pushback, I'm going to say she was my least favorite.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, first time in the history
Oh,
stumbling across the multiverse, this podcast, my favorite is Wade. Uh,
oh,
yeah, my favorite is Wade. Like, not just for that scene where after she figured out about the Azure um, Gate Bridge, there was something when it came to. So let's just say her and Remy, because I can't even say the professor,
mm-hmm.
because the professor wasn't our professor. Like he didn't have a chance to see his world and be like, "Oh, okay, I accept this." He was chained in a basement. Yeah, for most of the episodes. So, but between Remy and Wade, I enjoyed seeing, and this is, I don't know if this is a good thing to say, but seeing her desperation to hold on to this world
Mm-hmm.
that she wanted. So basically, because she had more interaction with Quinn, whenever Quinn would come up, bring these kind of these kind of wackadoodle examples of this world,
Yeah.
she would be the one to like to his face to be like, okay, this is some bullshit. But it just seemed like I felt that her trying to hold on to that felt, I don't want to say genuine, actually a little bit, because her, I don't like the focus with Remy and his career. I just
Yeah.
don't. And maybe that's part of the reason why I'm giving this more to Wade in this case,
Okay.
because I felt her stuff felt a little bit more genuine. Now,
Mm-hmm.
definitely there were kind of questionable things that her and I think each of these characters have done
Mm-hmm.
outside of Quinn, but I that's partly for me kind of why I enjoyed her as far
Okay.
as like, being my
That's
favorite.
fair.
As far as like least favorite, um, I'm just for the reason that you mentioned. I'm piggybacking off of you, the receptionist, because of the hair, and
Uh,
being complicit, and just
right. Okay.
having locking somebody up. So maybe the pairing of the therapist and the assistant because of the hair, and being complicit, and because of the therapist for being on some bullshit. So those, so that's the
Yo.
first pairing. So now favorite and least favorite moment from the episode.
Okay. So this is going to completely contradict me. Favorite is Wade crying.
Yeah,
She ate that
yeah,
the fuck up. That to all your points, her desperation, her
yeah,
frustration, all of that felt so real in a way that not that they haven't been real in this show.
mhm,
The show is a campy, fun comedy action adventure, but
yeah,
like that scene, you could lift that and put it in a soap opera, lift it and put it in a movie, lift it and put it on a commercial. Like that was so raw that
yeah,
I'm thinking like, yes, you're a good actress, but like, what were you maybe going through or
mhm,
have been through to channel that in that 2 minute time? That wasn't even a big scene. I can't imagine what was left on the cutting room floor. So for me, favorite has to be that scene of Wade crying. That in combination of Quinn comforting her and it not feeling like, oh,
yeah,
we're going to be together. No, that felt like a genuine moment. So
mhm,
that's my favorite. My least favorite. Um, this one may be a little harder because I have my critiques about the episode,
mhm,
but overall I did enjoy it. Um, Least favorite, because even with my critiques of Remy, like it was good to see him doing shit again, even though it
yeah,
was the same shit. Least favorite probably would be, I'll just say the fight. The ending
okay,
fight where, oh, who switched who? That, because for everything you mentioned before, that third act rush running through,
mhm,
you didn't give me time to sit with even being emotionally invested in. Yeah, so I gotta say the ending, the twin fight.
okay. Um, so I think my favorite moment. just to give us something different, because I would have definitely I feel that the Wade and Quinn scene is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I'll let it be another Wade one. I liked her scene with her realization, looking at the bridge,
Oh.
looking at the bridge and seeing, that this wasn't their world.
Mm-hmm.
As far as least favorite scene, the the four tops coming in asking about that whole scene about the crying, because and not because men can cry. I fuck that. I mean, men
Mm-hmm.
can cry, but it was the jokes,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that comedy has no place in this show, but there was just I that just it didn't land well with me.
Mm-hmm.
It
Makes
just
sense.
didn't work. So that's my least favorite one. And I guess final thoughts. What are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. This is a damn good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Critiques aside or included, I do feel like this is another episode that if you've been watching Sliders for some time,
Yeah.
this is one that kind of pays off. Now, my biggest issue with this episode is that I feel like it should have been a season finale. Because we've already seen that they made it home. That specifically, that creaky door is specifically why this episode doesn't really work for me. What watching it straight through.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had have gotten the real world with the creaky door fixed after this, or got this as a season finale, then I think it probably would have worked better in the grand scheme of the show. But I
Mm-hmm.
love the storytelling. I love these. Is it cyclical storytelling? Is that what it is? Or the what? I don't think that's the word for it. But having Remy in present day, having the
Yeah.
flashback story,
Oh,
from his point of view,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then catching that because I don't know where they're going. And so even I don't even know where we are because the
Mm-hmm.
whole time I'm thinking we're in the same world, but he just was stressed out and was like, let me see a therapist. But we're not in the same world. So that I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good payoff, even if the therapist wasn't the one who got put into the mental facility. But overall, honestly, really stellar episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I think yeah, final thoughts. This is going to be one of my favorites. I got to remember if we did like a top 3 or a top 5, for last season. But yeah, this one is there's a reason why it's considered one of the best ones of
Mm-hmm.
the series
Yeah.
of ever all 5 seasons.
Mm.
Um, and I like the idea of them. And this is a messed up thing to say, but them getting close to what they want. And to
Mm-hmm.
be honest with you, they could have just kicked it,
Yeah.
and they could have just kicked it. But because of this desire to get home to their actual people or to their actual music career or whatever, it just they decided to leave. So I think it's that thing of like I it doesn't have to be a wacky world,
Right.
right? It the only thing that was different about this was his mom reacting to the mention of the A bomb,
Mm-hmm.
which to live in a world where there's no such thing as an A bomb
Yeah.
possibly is not a bad thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then the bridge being different. Those are the only two major things, and that's why I think the show works well as a balance between the crazy outlandish stuff. Like last week we had a dinosaur world, and then
Yeah.
this week we go to a world where it's just regular every day. So um, yeah. So for that, I like it. I mean, I like it a lot. So
Yeah.
um, so on a scale of how many Azure Bridge, Golden Gate Bridge, Azure Gate Bridges, scale of 10 of those, how are you rating this?
Green. No. I'm going to. This is really more difficult than I thought because I don't want to give it a 10, and it's not getting anything less than a 5.
Mhm.
Um, this episode has its issues, but if I'm being honest, and considering the 90s, and not the 90s like, yeah, they could have did the twin thing better because it's been done before, but the 90s, like, they don't tell stories how we tell them now.
Yeah.
If I can account for that, I think this episode actually gets much higher than I probably initially would have given it. I'm going to I think I'm still at least in the 8 area. I gotta say I can't give this anything less than an 8.5, to
Okay.
be honest, because I do, talking it out, I don't want to give it a 9, but I think I'm gonna say 8.7.
Okay.
I'm gonna put an 8.6 because I just, even that feels too low, but I 8.7. Final answer 8.7.
It's a,
8.7.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, I'm gonna give it an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a 9,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, at the beginning of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and not saying like, this was shooting down, but there the couple of things that bring it down for me is like the fixation on Remy and
Yeah.
his music and not caring about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might just be something I will never let go of, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the fact that his story is always played for jokes.
Yeah.
Um, that gets old. So
Yeah.
that might be playing a part in it. And the other thing where the just kind of the rush nature of
Mm-hmm.
those last few moments, which in Sliders lore is crucial. I'm telling you, like, as far as like where this goes, um, you don't do something that big
Yeah.
and just have it be handled as sloppy as it is. You got to give it some more time to kind of breathe, because they ran out of there like they didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, especially Wade and Remy, I mean, like, that's something where I'm just like, this is, like you said, we've been with you. This is family. And so we just going to let y'all duke it out, you know?
Makes no sense.
Yeah. And so those are two things that kind of bring it down. I don't want to say bring it down, because 8 is still a good score. I
Yeah.
think overall the episode it's a solid piece of sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Being honest with you. So, but I'm at an 8. I'm at an 8.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm locked in. I won't change my answer.
Yeah, yeah, no, keep it at 8.7.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's good, good, good.
yeah,
Oof, man, this was a heavy one.
yeah.
Oh my God, what do you? I don't know. Just yeah.
No, I mean, there. We talked about the Sliders. How this kind of ranks within the fandom. I mentioned the other thing I had want to mention was Adam Nimoy,
Mm-hmm.
directing it. So that's indirect Star Trek reference. Actually, apparently, I forgot Tracy Torme, one of the
Mm-hmm.
co-creators, used to write for Star Trek: The Next
Oh,
Generation.
cool.
So yeah, so it's kind of like, bringing folks from that family over to this
Mm-hmm.
family. Um, yeah, but nothing else as far as Sliders news. I
Mm.
keep looking for a reboot, news or something.
Something.
But I will say one thing I will mention is sometimes I will come across Sliders adjacent, like TV,
Mm-hmm.
something like, where they deal with like parallel worlds and
Yeah.
traveling to different, dimensions. And there's one that I watched called We Baby Bears, and it's a We Baby Bears. It's an animated series. Yeah. It's an animated series, which is a spinoff of a Cartoon Network series called We Bear Bears. And
Okay.
it's kind of like a slice of life little comedy about these bears who live in like the human world, and
Yeah.
it's funny. But the We Baby Bears is definitely made for a younger contingent or audience, and it has like an anime type of vibe. The humor is actually really funny, especially for like adults, so it's not
Yeah.
completely like for kids.
Okay, I'm
But
looking it
what
up.
they do is they get into like this magical box and they travel to different worlds. Like it is like and I don't know if it's parallel Earths, but the vibe that I get is that it feels kind of Sliders adjacent.
Yeah.
And but like I said, I needed something to just kind of like watch during lunchtime or just to kind of get my mind away from stuff. And it's the cutest show, but it is
Yeah.
awesome. Like they have some they have some like humor in there, which I know like goes above kids' heads.
Yeah.
So every now and then I will mention like a Sliders adjacent like TV show or maybe even comic book series,
Mm-hmm.
that I think people should check out. But like I said, if that's your vibe, if you love like Steven Universe, like
Oh,
that, it's that era of Cartoon Network when
okay.
Cartoon Network was just allowing the creators to just go in the kitchen and cook. Like, and this was one of them. It apparently is still on. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
waiting for like the last season to be put up on Max, but it's just something to kind of get your mind away. Kind of fantasy, sci-fi, cutesy type of vibe. But yeah, the worlds they go to are pretty funny.
Oh my, yeah, I'm looking it up now. I'm on Prime trying to see if I can add this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is hilarious. This,
It looks fun. I definitely say watch a trailer for it. See
yeah,
if it's for you. But like I said, they get into they get into the box and travel to different worlds. It's like that's the type of shit. Like if when I was a kid, I would be like, let's go.
yeah.
Imagination run wild. So,
That's good. That's what's up.
but yeah, I think I might start doing that a little bit more often. Just like if there are any things that are adjacent to
Yeah.
outside of the multiverse with Marvel. So,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even mention that from time to time. So,
Cool, cool. Well, shit, y'all check out We Baby Bears. I'll probably, if I can find a trailer, I'll link that in the show notes as well. And Robert, let these people know where to find you and support you, and to give back to all that you've given this show.
you can find me at Robert K. Jeffrey, JEFFREY.com, Robert K. Jeffrey. And my Instagram is robertk.jeffrey. That's robertk.jeffrey. And Bluesky, I'll have that next time. But yeah, those are those are the two main places. You can actually connect to me on Bluesky through my website. So, but yeah, I have a link on there too.
Good, good, good. Yes, y'all. Those links will be in the show notes. And of course, with me, anywhere you find Carefree Black Nerd, just search it. You should see it popped up. The logo, it should be purple or white. Who knows? Carefree Blurred on Twitter and TikTok, Carefree Black Nerd on IG and YouTube, and Carefree Black Nerd on Blue Sky. You find me. Just find me and say, hey, use the hashtag STTM pod. This episode in particular, let us know what your thoughts are, because this was a doozy.
Yeah.
And shit, I don't know, man. Just stay carefree, stay nerdy, stay geeky. And if you travel to a world, have a safe word, because there's no way that you should be duped by a world that's just slightly different from your own. Also, cut on the TV. How about let's do that? How about find out who the president is? Like, what the fuck? And whoever's sliding in our world from the 90s who's coming back today, I know they ain't gonna think this shit is real. But but that's it, y'all, man. Just take it easy.
Yeah, that'll be good.